Morning, gorgeous human beings. It's Monday, the 27th of September, and it is 9 o'clock. Therefore, it's Make It Happen Monday, where we talk about all the things that motivate us to take action, to do more of what we love, delegate the stuff we don't, and ditch the critic that says we can't. Those who don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrews. I'm also known as the Listening Detective, and I'm all about helping you listen to yourself and actually really understand what you need to be able to do more of what you love so that you can improve your performance and improve your relationships. So this week we're talking about why am I so emotional? And the reason I'm talking about that is because I had a number of clients last week that were talking about this sort of feeling of being impatient, feeling angry and irritated and unsettled, and feeling really annoyed with themselves because they didn't know why they were so emotional. And also I've got some personal stories over the weekend of where I found myself being, again, reacting in a way that perhaps wasn't how I wanted to react, but having to, luckily I have the tools, and I want to share with you three-step strategy that I use with all of my clients to help them to manage their emotions. So the first thing to do about this, why am I so emotional? Let's just clarify what I mean by emotional. Often the term emotional is used in a critical way. It's criticism. It's held in contempt. So first of all, I want to just be really clear that as humans, we are emotional beings. That's what sets us aside from machines and from robots. And so we experience emotions like joy and bliss and excitement and ecstasy, and we have grief and sadness and anger and disappointment and rage. We have a range of emotions. So having emotions isn't the problem. It's about how we express them, when we express them, and how that impacts the people around us. So when we are angry about something, that being angry is absolutely okay, except for sometimes the way that we demonstrate our anger may have a negative impact, or it may be projected onto and taken out on the people that we care about the most, and therefore that's the bit that's not okay. But what often happens is people start to think, I shouldn't be angry, because they don't like the fact that that's how they've treated somebody that they love, and so they try not to be angry, which means that they suppress those emotions, they push those emotions down inside of them, and often what happens is they either come out, clients have used metaphors like volcano or washing machine, so they keep pushing them down, they really push against showing that emotion, they suppress it, and then eventually, one day a little tiny thing can mean that they just snap and everything sort of explodes like a volcano. Or they have this constant, one of my clients had a washing machine metaphor where it's like her stomach was just churning all the time. Other people feel like they've got clamps on their heads, or their head's all sort of cloudy and muffly. And so what happens is that we in order to try not to express our emotion, because the way that we expressed it wasn't a good way to do it, we end up holding these emotions in. And then of course what happens, that then just becomes a cyclical problem. Then we get into a point where we're really angry and really irritable, and that's often when we're using emotional, when what we perhaps when I really drill down, I say to people, what kind of emotional? It's like, well, I'm showing my emotions and the reaction I'm having is irrational. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm overreacting. Now this is not about someone else saying, oh, you're overreacting. This is about you yourself thinking, gosh, this reaction I'm having is more than I'd really like to have. So that's a kind of what we're talking about emotions. Someone's just joined us or dropped off again. Is just thinking about those emotions. So one of the models I talk about in my book, and I meant to put the page here, let me get it out. So on page 41, so those of you who've got the book, this is the model, the triune brain. I've also got it on the flip chart, so I'm just going to pop that up. Just a quick look at this. Oh, she says, so you're very well prepared. I'm hoping you can see that from here. So one of the models that I use with my clients is to help them, is to understand that when we're going through change, there's the part of our brain, the mammalian brain, is the pattern spotting part of the brain. So it's going, oh, that happened. When you do this, this is what happens. Oh, when you do this, this is what happens. And it's tracking the patterns, and it's doing it with the purpose of keeping you safe. It's part of your survival brain. So it's like, what are the rules around here? How do we need to behave in order to feel like we belong, that we're safe, that we're connected, and that no one's going to turn on us and exclude us from the pack or attack us in any way, shape or form. And so when change is happening, when things are going, the mammalian brain goes on high alert because the rules have changed and it's trying to work out what's going on. So the way that you talk to yourself, about yourself and your situation, can determine whether or not you settle that part of your brain quickly or not. However, if you haven't taken time out to think about yourself and you haven't thought about what your triggers are, or don't understand what's happening and what's the process, that's sort of the series of actions that are actually happening that's accumulating to this emotional reaction, you often won't know what it is that's causing it. So the 3-step strategy that I always work with clients is, first of all, get clarity of what you want. So a client I was working with, they did the Power Hour a couple of weeks ago, and they were really angry all the time. That was their words. And they were sick of being angry, and what they wanted is to be calmer and to have nicer relationships. And whilst we would do whenever I do a session, we go to, at the end, we go ask what worked about that session, what didn't, what could work better. And one of the things they said is, I really hate talking about my feelings. I hate talking about emotions. So if that's what's going to be needed in order for this to change the situation, it's going to suck. So that's how they left the session. They did commit to doing the Clarity Constant Change program, and they started with session 1. And at the end of one session, they had realised already that things had changed, and that actually this talking about how you feel isn't going to be as difficult as they thought. So I want to share that with you, because I see so many people who avoid reaching out, they avoid talking to anybody, they avoid talking about how they feel, for the very reason is often the people who you're talking to do not know how to listen to an emotional response. So if you're crying, or you're upset, or you're angry, or even if you're really downright excited and joyful, often the people around us don't always know, or perhaps you don't know how you need them to listen to you, so they don't respond in the way that you want, and therefore you expressing your emotions becomes the thing that's the problem. Whereas most often it's just that we haven't got the people around us who know how to listen. So one of the things I do, first of all, the first thing is to focus on clarity. So I call it clarity brain. So I'm just going to pop up here. So step 1 is clarity. So focus on what you'd like to have happen. So if you are angry and you want to be calmer, focus on calmer. Actually think about karma's like what, then what happens, where does karma come from, what happens just before your karma. The more you know about that, then what you're doing is you're retraining the mammalian part of your brain to start to be really, really noticing when you're calmer, starting to notice the patterns, starting to give you feedback that you are calmer today than you were yesterday. So one of the first things I do with all my clients is find out what they'd like to have happen, and then get them for the first week or two to catch themselves getting it right. Notice what works, notice what happens just before their karma. And the second thing is to build confidence. And so one of the things that you can build confidence with this process is to actually notice what happens just before your karma. What is the series of actions? What's the environment? What is it that you're seeing and hearing? How are people responding to you? The more you can catch yourself getting it right, the more your mammalian brain goes, oh, I get the rules around here now. Yep, this is this, they're safe. Because what's happened before that is, if you've been angry and you've had it's caused an argument, your brain's always going, oh my God, when they're angry, they have arguments and everything goes wrong, and then their relationships fall apart. So it goes on high alert. And of course, then every time you notice you're angry, it also brings you back to that sort of warning bell. So it brings up a lot of stress, which means we can't get into our neocortex part of our brain, where we can't do our clarity thinking, where we can't problem solve, we can't make sense. And that's when we start to go, I don't understand why this is happening. So the first thing you can do is focus on what you want. So whatever your emotion is, think about what you'd like to have happen. Good morning, whoever's joined me this morning, please say hello. Second thing is the confidence is actually start to engage with evidence-based feedback. Start to collect evidence of when you're getting what you want. Now, one of the things I'll say to clients, if you're coming to me saying to me that you feel angry all the time, we will look at, when you're calmer, even if it's only for 1 second per day, make sure you notice it and make sure that you give yourself, give evidence-based feedback, collect the evidence of when you do have it, because you have to start to get feedback to that mammalian brain that there is enough patterns that you can be calmer, you have been calmer, and that you're getting calmer more often. or whatever the emotion is that you want. So whether you want to feel joy or bliss or love or whatever you want to feel, you focus on that, and then you track that in order to increase your awareness of when you have it. And then the last thing is the change, is to remember that all change is uncomfortable. So even if you're changing from an emotion you don't want, like anger to calm, you're going to experience Good morning, Gail. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for your comment there. Great points. Thank you for that. I'd love to know if there's anything you take away from today. That'd be great. When you're going through change, if you go from being angry to calm, the mammalian part of your brain will still feel unsettled, even though it's what you want. And because the angry is the familiar, it's the autopilot, it's the response that you're going for. And so it's just being aware of that and making sure you've got the right support around you. And that's when it's really important to understand what do you need to hear and see in order to settle your brain when you're going through change of any sort, whether you're going towards something you really want or getting away from something you don't want. Even if you're getting what you want, your system can often have a reaction to that because it feels uncomfortable, because it's not predictable yet, because you haven't collected the evidence. And so that's something you have to do over time. And that's why having a coach or having a peer support network or having somebody in your life who's really good at listening to you is a great starting point. Someone that can listen without judgment, that can let you be whatever you are, whether you're angry, sad, joyful or whatever. But also having someone that can help you track when you're getting it right. So they'll notice when you're getting it right rather than only noticing when you're not getting it right. But more importantly, can stay with you over time, because sometimes the change takes time. And often we need to be able to plot it, whether it's in a notebook or an Excel sheet, but if we've got other people that go, yeah, but do you remember what you were like before? You were angry, like really, really roaring, and now it's just like a little tiny murmur. Sometimes we don't track it very well, so having people outside of us can help us do that. And so I said I'd share at the beginning here a little story. So my clients come in there within one session have discovered that actually talking about how they feel and their emotions isn't as challenging as they thought, because instantly through the process we change their focus from what they don't want to what they do want. Therefore it becomes something that's resourceful rather than something that's not resourceful. That's not to say that during that course, that the time we're going to work together, we won't explore anger when becoming angry, that's like what, and that we won't look at what the triggers are, and we won't look to find out what resource and support they need, because that will be part of the journey. But the most resourceful thing I can do first of all is find out what they'd like to be like instead, and make sure they've got all those resources in place. So at the weekend, those of you who follow me on Facebook and perhaps seen on LinkedIn, my husband did a 255-mile bike ride around the King Arthur Way here in the UK. He was on his mountain bike, so it was off-road. He was rough camping when he couldn't find hotels, etc. And I was reporting on the actual Facebook, etc. And my son commented, "You looked a lot calmer this time than the last time that Dad did this ride." And I said, I was a lot calmer. But then Saturday, I found myself being really, really teary and really irrationally and absolutely exhausted. And what I hadn't appreciated, for those who were with us at the beginning of the video, is that at the beginning, I was holding it all down because he has had a heart attack before. He was going to sleep rough, and he told me some really horror stories about people who'd been, attacked by the farmers going, "Get off my land," and slashed their tents and all sorts of stuff. So I hadn't been aware that I was holding those emotions in because I wanted to encourage him. I wanted to be proud of him. I wanted to be his supporter. But once he was back and safe, it was like all of those emotions that I had held in were coming out. And so for me, I know what works is to go and have some quiet time and be on my own, or to be able to just simply talk about how I felt without the other person feeling guilty for the emotion they've evoked in me, or commenting on it, or trying to make me feel better. And so I was able to express that, yeah, it wasn't this before I was worried about him having a heart attack again. This time that wasn't the case, although I was a little bit wary because his fitness levels had gone down, but it was more about this sleeping rough that I was worried about. And so having the ability to talk those emotions through meant I was able to settle the mammalian part of my brain that, this is okay, this is part of change, and remind myself that he made it, he had a great time and everything was fine. So I'd love to know for you, if you could manage your emotions. What emotion would you like more of, and what emotions would you like to have less of? That leaves me to finish today's Make It Happen Monday. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you soon.